people, who is more competent? Whose mind is sounder? Biden beats you in that.
Well, I tell you what, let's take a test. Let's take a test right now. Let's go down. Joe and I will take a test. Let him take the same test that I took.
Incidentally, I took the test too when I heard that you passed it.
Yeah, how did you do it?
Well, it's not the hardest test.
No, but
there's a picture and it says, what's that? And it's an elephant.
No. You see, that's all misrepresentation.
Well, that's what it was on the web.
It's all misrepresentation. Because, yes, the first few questions are easy, but I'll bet you couldn't even answer the last 5 questions. I'll bet you couldn't. They get very hard, the last 5 questions.
Well, one of them was count back from 100 by 7.
And let me tell you, you couldn't answer. You couldn't answer.
All right, what's the question?
Many of the questions. I'd get you the test. I'd like to give it. But I guarantee you that Joe Biden could not answer those questions. Okay? I answered all 35 questions correctly.
You talk about how...
So what you just saw there was Chris Wallace interviewing Donald Trump on Fox News, focusing in on the fact that while Donald Trump has been bragging about passing a rigorous cognitive health test, all that test really asks you to do is know how to subtract by 7 and know what an elephant is. In simple terms, it's a test any child should be able to pass. And yet Trump has been bragging about it like he just got into Mensa or something. And this interview, how Trump looks so insecure about it, shows that he made a mistake in trying to tar and feather Joe Biden with the brush of cognitive decline and dementia because he's weak on those issues too. I'm not one to suggest that Biden doesn't exhibit those symptoms. We've seen the clips of Biden, really, really tough to watch, where he slurs his speech, he goes off course, he forgets where he is sometimes, his wife has to drag him off camera. It's not as if there's no merit to the claims around Joe Biden. It's just that with Donald Trump, you see much of the same thing. And as Chris Wallace noted in the beginning of that clip, when you poll Americans, and this is a Fox News poll, about who they feel has the mental fitness for office, neither Trump nor Biden do well, truthfully, but Biden's got positive numbers, barely, and Trump has negative numbers. So on the whole, the American people see Biden as more cognitively healthy and fit for office than the current president, Donald Trump. Again, this is a man that has bragged so much about this test, about how he's the one that's sharp and young and virile and healthy. And he's talked about sleepy Joe Biden until the cows come home. And if Trump was in his 50s, and if Trump didn't have all the gaffes that he's had, if Trump could consistently walk down ramps, and if Trump could consistently hold a glass of water with one hand, maybe these attacks wouldn't be boomeranging back on him, but they are. He could go after Joe Biden on so many things, but by choosing this, he's opened himself up for an attack, and the American people have said, at least thus far, they think Trump is the one with the cognitive health, cognitive decline, dementia issues more than Joe Biden. So you can see, again, this is another flailing interview. We watched the first clip from this that was aired just before the weekend, where Trump tried to say that Joe Biden in his platform wants to defund the police. Chris Wallace, of course, said it's not there. He asked for the document, and Trump, of course, could find nothing in the Biden platform or in the Biden-Bernie Sanders cooperative document from their task force mentioning defunding or abolishing the police. Absolutely embarrassing. And this was also embarrassing. But lest we think it's just about embarrassing gaffes from Donald Trump we can laugh about, there were also some seriously awful things he said in this interview, including the fact that the world wars were quote-unquote beautiful, but he also suggested that when some people want to change the names of certain American military forts and bases away from Confederate figures over to people that have less of a negative, traitorous legacy to the United States, he said, what are you going to do? Name them after Reverend Al Sharpton? And he was doing something very particular there. He was juxtaposing white Confederate soldiers and generals and leaders, people whose legacy is wrapped up in the vision that black people are inferior to them, and juxtapose that with the absurdity of naming a base after a famous black religious leader and civil rights leader. It's not a dog whistle, It's a gosh darn foghorn. And of course, no one is really suggesting you name a military base after Reverend Al Sharpton because he's not really a military figure. But you might well suggest that you name it after people who have served in World War I and World War II and served with distinction and yet have good personal characters and weren't actually people that wanted to defeat the United States in a war, which is what the Confederates were. They were the enemies. Right? So Donald Trump, whether it's his flailing about with cognitive decline or whether it's his racial dog whistling, came absolutely off as embarrassing in this interview. Absolute wall-to-wall horror show from Donald Trump. And again, I know this is baseline. We shouldn't have to praise Chris Wallace for doing his job, but I've seen it so rarely done, especially on Fox, but even on other networks, that Trump's actually been held accountable. So it's really good to see from Chris Wallace. So thanks, Chris.